Hey guys, this is Savannah from earthandwater.co. Today I am with Christina Smith. She is a personal development coach, author, speaker, and you have your own podcast, don't you?
I do. I do. It's called Inviting Shift. It's named after the book that I wrote.
Oh, you have a book. Well, I mean, obviously you're an author. It says author right here in front of me, but I was looking around your website and I didn't see a book anywhere. So,
Yeah, it's a little bit older. It's called Inviting Shift. And it came up because I had originally, over 10 years ago, become a health coach to fix my own health problems. And then I became a health coach for other people. And what I realized is that most of the time, we know what the hell we're supposed to do, right? But what it stops us from actually, exercising or eating the good food or drinking the water or sleeping the 8 hours. And so I went on to like a whole year of like research and studying and trying to figure out how is it that we actually make shift happen. And so the book is about the 5 stages of shift as I see them. And it's an acronym for shift, which I think is really important because the first one is something isn't right. We know that feeling like, I feel stuck. I don't know what's going on. I just kind of feel meh. And then we have the honing in and honoring, which is like figuring out, like starting to uncover, like, well, what do those feelings mean? What do those emotions mean? What's going on inside me? And then we all love the I stage, which is like the I got it stage. And we're like, oh, yeah, I know exactly what I need to do. Stay away from sugar, right? Or whatever the thing is. And then we get into the F stage, which is appropriately named because it's fear, fortitude, or whatever F word you want to use, because that is the hard stage. That is where we have to make those everyday choices. And this is usually where we get stuck because it feels hard. So we go, oh, this must not be the right thing. Let me go back to the H stage, right? And like figure it out. But it's really about we're either going to cave to the fear, or we're going to have the fortitude to move forward, which means making those new choices, dealing with those inner conflicts that come up when we start making new choices. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I think about, oh, I should go exercise, if it's not in my routine, it's like, why is this so hard? Like, why is it so hard just to get myself to go there? And then the T is the transformation. When we default to our new behavior more than we default to the old behavior that we had. So, yeah, so the podcast is really after that. And it's all about midlife women, how we regain, or maybe for the first time gain our confidence back, and how we really start to love ourselves in this human form that we have, because I think humaning is really hard.
oh gosh, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the book that I wrote several years ago. It's got all kinds of good stuff in there, tips and tricks of how we can look at things in a different way, ways that we can move ourselves forward to the next stage, and how we can really start feeling confident about this cycle of transformation, how we can continue to shift the things that we want to shift. Because unfortunately, I haven't met one person who's like, oh, I'm done. I'm good. I'm exactly where I always wanted to be. And I got no more growing to do.
Absolutely. There's always a next level, always another stage. But it really is hard to
Yeah.
do that implementation part where, we can read the books all day long. We can know all of the exercises, have all of the tools, but then knowing and actually experiencing it and doing it in the field is two completely different way things. Procrastination is really hard. We'll convince ourselves that we can't do that right now because XYZ. And there's always an XYZ. And there's always, oh, tomorrow. And tomorrow never comes. You're always putting it off. And yeah, it's all about we're more comfortable where we're at. Stick with the devil, rather than, what if I try and it doesn't work out? Or trying is never ending also, because if you want to make these everlasting changes, it's continuous. It's not something that you do once or twice. It's something that, like for diet, for example, I always say that diets don't work, lifestyle changes do. And you really have to break these things down into the smallest little parts that you can, so that they are more digestible and more easily implemented.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you bring up procrastination, because I think procrastination's best friend is perfectionism.
Oh,
And
yes.
I can relate to this so much because I've been crocheting these little dolls for my clients. Long story. But I have just gotten to the face part, right? And it's so challenging because it's a whole new skill, right? Like it's one thing just to crochet something, but to create a face on a doll is like, for me, it's so intimidating. And I can get that static in the back of my head that's like, you're not going to do this, right? You're going to mess it up. This is going to look deformed. You're not going to. And so for the last 2 weeks, those dolls have been sitting where I've been creating them, just sitting there staring at me. And it's because, like, I know that I am procrastinating because I'm afraid I'm not going to get it right. But what is the truth? Like, of course, we're never going to get it right if we don't start trying, right? If we don't start doing the thing and then, like, being like, okay, I might have to do this over, and that's okay. But for us, that discomfort can be so much that it gets us stuck, right? And I think that discomfort is really the major red flag for all of our change, is that anytime things get uncomfortable, I know I'm a creature of comfort. I can get challenged and then I just want to stop and be like, until I know I can do it perfect, I'm not going to move forward. But what I love about that is, like, confidence isn't a feeling. We think that, oh, I'm going to feel confident enough to go do that thing one day. But confidence is actually a skill
Mm-hmm.
that we have to practice, right? So confidence doesn't say I'm going to do it perfect every time. Confidence says I'm going to show up, I'm going to do the thing, and I know that it may not work out the way that I want it to. Then I'm going to try again. And so it's a skill, and if it's a skill, it's something that we can build, right? So I guess what I'm saying is I need to go work on those doll faces when we're done here.
Yeah, no,
Great pep.
confidence is absolutely a skill that you can learn. And people say it's essentially fake it till you make it, right? And it's not really a faking it or a making it top thing. It's a choice to do it even though you're uncomfortable. Do it.
Yeah, do it as though you are the person. Do it as though you are the person who knows what they're doing. Like, just go do the things. Yeah, I don't like the fake it till you make it. It makes me
No.
cringe every time I hear it,
Yep.
because, like, every time I do that, I feel fake.
Yep.
Right. And then that just, like, encourages that imposter syndrome,
Mhm.
rather than, like, I am learning and I'm going to just try it. And there's nothing harmful about me crocheting these little faces, right? I mean, I'm not going to, there's nothing unsafe about it, which is one of the questions that I always ask my clients. Is this unsafe or is it uncomfortable? And 99% of the time, because of the world that we live in, I mean, we're semi-safe. We're not running from animals every day. We're not, doing all these life-saving things every day. Most of the stuff that we do is just uncomfortable. And the good news about that is discomfort is where the growth is. Like, that's where we grow, is in our discomfort. We don't grow when we're cozy wozy in our little blankets, right? Like, we have to actually go out and do things and practice things and learn things. And unfortunately, that's all very uncomfortable for a lot of us.
Absolutely. It does get better though, eventually. I tell a
Yeah.
story about how there is this girl I graduated with who posted this picture on Facebook one time of her in this just the brightest red lipstick you've ever seen. And it was just so beautiful. And I commented, I was like, man, I wish I could do things like that. And she was like, I mean, you can just put it on. And I was like, that's funny. You obviously don't get it. I can't just put it on. But it really is that simple, just making yourself do it. And baby steps. I had to because I mean, obviously I wear lipstick now. I never did before. And it's kind of a new development that I have been the past like year, but it took me wearing it around the house by myself first. And then you get a little braver and you go to your mom's house with it on and see if anything happens. And then you go to Walmart and, and before you know it, it becomes second nature and it's not as big of a deal as it used to be. And that's, one example that can be used across the board. Doing podcasts and videos. I started out just recording myself to me, never posting a thing. And, baby steps, right?
Right, right. And even with the lipstick, like, maybe the first step is just researching the different colors that are good good on different skin tones or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be like, I need to jump off the cliff. It could be, I need to research what happens when people jump off the cliff. I want to, like, make the right jump and make sure I'm in the right spot. So there could be a lot of things that we're doing. It's just sometimes sometimes I have clients who want to like research the hell out of things, and which means like they need to know every detail. And we all know that there's certain things you are not going to learn until you actually go through and do the dang thing, right? And really learn for yourself, all the little lessons. And I think it's so silly because like all masters started out as apprentices, right? Or as interns or learners or whatever. And we don't look at a child and go, oh, there's an imposter adult. Like, because they're just learning. They're learning how to tie their shoes, how to drive, how to, communicate with other people, how to get by in life. And we don't call them imposters. They're children, they're learning. And that's what we have to be a little bit more kinder to ourselves and be like, I'm going to learn. And yeah, I'm going to make mistakes. But until I make those mistakes, I'm not going to get to the part that I like. I think it was Richard Branson who said, if you are not ashamed of your first release, then you release too late, because he's really into, you just got to go throw the thing out there and try it and keep at it. And then that's how we get better. We don't start perfect. So I think that discomfort of us wanting to be perfect all the time can be such a detriment, like even when it comes to yoga. If I show up to my first yoga class and I can't do all the moves exactly how the teacher does it, I mean, that's okay, right? Like, I think especially yoga stretches that, right? And goes, yeah, do what you can do. But some people don't hear that part and they're just like, I just can't do it.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely.
They lose that childlike wonder of like, did you ever see a kid learning how to tie their shoes? They'll do it like 100 times and mess up 100 times more, and they'll just keep going because that child, I work with a lot with archetypes. So our childlike energy is curious. It'll keep learning and learning and trying and trying. It's when we become adults that we see other people do it and we're like, oh, they do everything right on the first time. Well, no.
But you're right. I come from a background of perfectionism that was really, really bad. And so bad that before I ever stepped foot in a yoga studio, I participated in YouTube yoga sessions by myself at home. I wouldn't even do yoga if my husband was at home, because that's how embarrassed I was at how bad I was. And I had to get to a point to where I felt comfortable enough myself before I could ever go do it in front of like my husband in the living room, much less someone else like in a whole class. And it's so funny now that we come from, where we start out to where we end up. But yeah, you have to be okay being bad at something if you ever want to be good at it. And confidence is the same way. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm. And that is a skill of confidence, is being okay with being bad with it until you can get better at it, right? Is like the confidence is really like a trust in myself that I'm going to make it through. Like that's really what it is. And it's not like some people think it's going to be like this magical feeling that one day I'm going to trust myself. No, it's something that we have to build, we have to work on. It's not magical. It doesn't just fairy dust and all of a sudden we're the confident people we want to be. No, it's really about building that trust with ourselves that even if I fail, I'm going to try again, or I'm going to look at how I could do it better. I'm going to learn something from it, that I'm going to get something out of this, even if it's not what I wanted. Right. And that's like the biggest cause of suffering, I think, is the world isn't showing up the way that I want it to. Yeah. Well, welcome to humaning.
Yeah, humaning. I love that because yes, I agree completely. And you're gonna make a fool of yourself sometimes. Because we're not the same every day. Some days I am a very good communicator. Today's one of those days where I'm having trouble formulating words and thoughts. It's okay. It happens. The thing I tell people is that you have to just continuously show up and keep showing up and create that sense of integrity to where, like, it's okay if you look like a fool sometimes. You just want to not most of the time, because we're all going to do something that, or say something, or make
Yeah.
ourselves look something all the time, especially with so many different realities coming together on the internet. You know, there's the you'll do or say something that one person is just like, wow, that was life changing, I never thought about it like that. And that same statement that you made that changed one person's life will make another one like think you're absolutely ridiculous.
Will trigger them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think so where I get to with my clients is like how like they want to know like, but how do I show up? And am I being this enough or am I being too much of that? Because I think most of our wounds come down to I'm too much or not enough,
Oh,
whatever that thing
absolutely.
is. And so I use a method that I've come up with called the intentional and aligned method. And that is basically looking at what is it that I actually want? And even more importantly, why do I want it? And I believe that what we want, it always comes down to a feeling. Like we create these big, beautiful vision boards, but it's not necessarily the things on the vision board that we want.
Mm.
It's the feeling that we think we're going to have when we have those things. Right. So
Yeah.
if I have this big, beautiful family on my vision board, it might mean that I want connection, I want love, I want compassion. So, whatever it is that you want to feel most, right? So, let's go with love, compassion, and connection just because it's easy. Well, then I need to show up with love, compassion, and connection. And if I can focus on that every day, I'm going to yoga class, I'm going to mess up. Well, I'm going to have love, I'm going to connect, and I'm going to be compassionate with myself, right? Then I'm bringing what I want to my life. Because for me, I was in my mid 30s when I had checked all the damn boxes that I was supposed to check, husband, good job, children, house, fence, all of the pretty things that we think that we're supposed to want.
Mhm.
And I was crying on my way to work every day. My job wasn't bad. I had a good job. I worked for good people, but I still cried on the way to work every day. And I was like, but I'm supposed to be happy because my mom said, when you have this, that, and that, you're going to be happy. Well, here I am with it all. And I was more miserable than I had ever been.
Mhm.
Well, what I realized is that if you want to be happy when you get there, you have to bring the happy with you.
Mhm.
You can't just keep putting it off and going, oh, one day I'm going to be happy. One day, right?
Mhm.
Because we're wasting the whole journey. I wasted 35 years trying to get to happy just to find out that happy wasn't at a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. But I could have been happy most of those days, right? I'm not saying we're automatically going to feel love, compassion, and connection just because we want to, but we can bring it with us, make choices in our lives that are more aligned to that. I can't tell you how many times I have clients who are like, I want to spend more time with my family, but I work so much, right? And it's like, okay, well, family is one of your things, like whatever that looks like, love and connection and compassion, maybe. Why are you not making choices in alignment at 6 o'clock when you're like, oh, I could go hang out with my family, or I could get one more project done,
Mhm.
right? You're out of alignment with what you want if you keep choosing work.
Yeah.
And I know that that's a hard thing to break, but that's what our intentions are bringing up is like you're not living the life that you want because you're not bringing the happy with you. You're not bringing the love, the connection, the compassion with you if that's what you want. And we have to make choices in alignment with that. And when we do that, we get more of what we want. So I can go to a yoga class as a newbie and be like, well, I'm just going to have love and compassion and connection with myself. Like, and as long as I've done that, even if I've made all of the mistakes, I can at least feel good about myself going, did I show up with love, connection, and compassion in mind? Sure did. Well, then I can feel good about myself because that's all I can really control. I
Mhm.
mean, until I practice and practice, I can't control my yoga getting better, right? Until I can't control what other people are going to say or do. I can't control goals. I know that, our society is so goal driven, which is nice. But we really focused less on goals because I don't care what you want it to look like. I want it to feel the way that you want to feel when you get there. Because often the universe has like bigger, better things than we could ever imagine for ourselves. But as long as we're feeling the way that we want, that's the beautiful part about it. And if all I have to do is judge myself on how I showed up, That takes out me trying to control other people and situations and all the things that I can't control. It really focuses empowerment on myself. As long as I am showing up the way that I want to, as long as I'm controlling the thing that I can control, then how everything else falls is really not none of my business. Does that make sense? So that's really how we get focused and intentional and aligned with what it is that we want in our lives. We stop running into those conflicts of let me see, old beliefs. So like one of my old beliefs is hard work equals success.
Mm.
Well, you know what that meant? That meant I chose all the really hard things to do because I felt like they had to be hard for me to be successful. I made things hard that weren't hard. I made them a lot more complicated and harder because I would feel better if I really worked through something. But what that left out was me being able to sit in the light and the strengths and the gifts that I was given, right? Because I'm always chasing the hard thing. Well, some of our gifts and some of our magic is in the things that come easy to us. And so, me making everything hard just made me exhausted and started hating my own company, right? My own business because it was so hard.
Mm.
So now I've had to change those, but we have all these old beliefs that dictate how we show up in life, whether your mother, like mine, said, "Oh, you have to work twice as hard as a man." Back in the 80s, this was the thing, right? You have to work twice as hard as a man just to get paid less, right? Or be as respected or whatever. Well, when I took all that old beliefs into my new life, it's like, okay, well, some of my wants are for life to be easeful,
Mm.
to be loving, right? And none of those old beliefs really aligned with my intentions and what I really wanted. So I had to start rethinking some of those old beliefs because they can really hold us back. I'm not sure if you have any old beliefs that might be holding you back. And maybe this is just a midlife thing that
Oh no, I think all of us do.
yeah. Yeah, and so we can't see them until I couldn't see them anyway, until I decided how it was that I wanted to feel
Mm.
and what was holding me back from feeling that way. And it was all these old beliefs thinking that I can't be happy until I get there. And it's like, whew, that's harsh because the
Mhm.
journey is long and getting there is like 2 seconds. We're
Mhm.
like there for 2 seconds and then we have something else we're moving on to, right?
Yeah, because it's a lifelong thing, all of it. We're all
Yeah.
here for the rest of our lives. So the whole journey, you got to think of it as the whole instead of, this is the road that I'm on now. And at the end of it, well, not necessarily. And that's why you have to know what your priorities are. And you have to choose those priorities, no matter if they go against the grain of what other people expect of you or what culture society expects of you. I saw this TikTok recently. It was a man who was like, I don't have a penny to my name. I am broker than I have ever been. I am negative drafted, $30. My truck needs this done. It won't run. I can't get to work. Like he was just 30 seconds of just explaining everything that was going wrong in his life. And at the end of it, he went, but I am the happiest I have ever been in my life because I have been choosing X, Y, and Z. And I was like, wow, yes, that's wonderful. And I think people are really starting to maybe realize that life is short and, we're all inevitably going to be done with it. Why not? Why are we spending it working our lives away when what we
Mm.
actually want to do is spend time with our family? And is that going to come with some consequences? Yeah, but there's also ways to work around that if you just trust the process, essentially.
Yeah, and the sacrificing, right? That's what I was raised with. Like, whew, up until I was 30, I either worked two full-time jobs or I went to school full-time and worked full-time. And that was because, like, sacrifice. I had immigrant grandparents. So my mother is first generation, and this is very typical. Like you sacrifice, you work really hard, the American dream, right? But when I had the house and the picket fence and everything, I was like, I don't really want to clean a bigger house. Like we could get a bigger house. I don't want to clean a bigger house. I don't want to just collect stuff. And I have nothing against people who love to shop or love to have big houses. It just didn't fit me. And I think that, consumerism and capitalism has us all thinking that there's this ultimate dream of having like 2 or 3 houses and the cars and the fancy clothes. And I mean, the reality is for me, none of that fits. When I go on vacation, I don't want to get dressed up and put on all the makeup and have the fancy clothes. I actually want to go camp in the middle of nature somewhere and not have to deal with all of that looks and, what everything, like, I really just want to be in the middle of nowhere. And I had to start looking at like, wow, I'm not a very good consumer. I'm not very good at like keeping the capitalist system going, right? But I am really good at knowing what I want. And that's not a fancy house. I'm never going to have a 4 or 7,000 foot square house. I would rather have a greenhouse and a little house that, is manageable for me to clean or to keep maintained. I don't like maintaining stuff. And it's cool for those people who love it. But like really starting to tune in, I really got to know what I really wanted. And it wasn't the fancy beach vacations that I used to have. It's like being in the middle of the woods on a mountain for a week. Like, that's what thrills me. And I know it's not that fancy. And I know that there's like a lot of people going, you're supposed to want room service and stuff. I don't.
It
Like,
is
I
kind of
don't.
fancy
And
though. I'm a really outdoorsy person, so I
Mhm.
understand completely. I read that on your website how you were wanting to downsize, and I also want to downsize. I'm always trying to convince my husband that our house is too big. I can't keep up with it. I would much rather have something a little bit smaller, more manageable, less stuff. I'm big into minimalism. Which is really hard if you have a big family like I do, because just because you're a minimalist doesn't mean that everybody else is.
Nobody else wants to be. My husband is the same too.
But being out there in nature, it is kind of a luxury to be
Mhm.
able to step away from the consumerist cycle that we're all stuck in and just go out there and exist and lay in the hammock for three
Mhm.
hours. That is my idea of luxury. Absolutely. I mean, there's hot showers are nice, but
Yeah, and I could do without them though for a couple of days. Well, you give me a lake and it might be even longer. But right, but that's where we are, right? I'm not making glamour shots. I'm not becoming somebody I'm not, but I'm more comfortable being in the skin that I'm in. So I think sometimes I have to ask my clients, why is it that you want that? Like if that's on your vision board, again, let's go back to the vision board. How does that say that you want to feel? And maybe if you can't afford those fancy vacations and you're like, I really, really do want them, well, then we can at least start with the intention behind them. How is it that you were going to feel? I don't know, fabulous, over the top, and kind of a big deal. Great. Then treat yourself that way now
yes.
and make choices in alignment with that now. How would you how would you eat breakfast? I mean, it comes down to like the simplest things. How would you eat breakfast if you were kind of a big deal and fabulous and over the top, right? Go do that for yourself. That's probably something you can do, right?
Mhm.
But these like little things that we can make choices about, they all need to be in alignment with what we want, because then we're staying focused on that, and we don't get sucked into the drama as much. Because yes, I realize that I'm not always going to feel love, compassion, and connection, and we're pretty dynamic beings. So I can feel love, compassion, and connection and still be angry and still be grieving or sad, right? We can have multiple emotions. Um, we just have to balance them. And the only reason those people call them negative emotions, I don't like that. They're uncomfortable emotions, whatever that is. For me, joy is uncomfortable. When I was growing up,
Mhm.
if you had joy, you held it in a little box, because taking it home, somebody would have like stabbed at it. And so, like, I would never show my joy at home because it just wasn't acceptable.
Mhm.
Anger was,
Yep.
right? But the way that anger was expressed was so scary that it was uncomfortable as well. So for me, any emotion was like really uncomfortable growing up.
Mhm.
And that's all they are. Like, so I could call joy negative for me, but
Mhm.
it wouldn't do it any good. But seeing it as uncomfortable means that what is comfort other than familiar,
Mm.
right? Familiar in a safe way. So the only reason they're uncomfortable is because we weren't taught how to manage them in a good way. If we were taught how to manage each of our emotions and that they weren't wrong, like how many times were we told, that's nothing to be sad about, that's nothing to be angry about. And then all of a sudden we're like questioning our own emotions, like they're lying to us. And they're not. It really is sad or angry for us. But learning how to manage them in a good way where it's not hurting other people, where you're not hurting yourself. Once we do that, we realize they're just uncomfortable. They're not unsafe, right? Going back to that question, is this unsafe or is this uncomfortable? Feelings are just uncomfortable. They're not unsafe.
Yeah, we have a lot of that in our society and culture with emotions and people painting things. Like, I know there's a family member I have who you cannot share anything that you're happy about with them because they think that you're bragging or throwing it in their face. And it's like, no, I'm just happy about something and trying to share it with you because I love you, you know. But so that affects us. So we start clamming up and not sharing. Yeah. Sorry. We have to be comfortable with the pauses sometimes. I can always can't.
About discomfort or anger or grief. Oh goodness, we are humaning is, like I said, isn't is a challenge for all of us to do it in a really good way and compassionate way with other people. Being uncomfortable isn't unsafe, and I think that's the biggest thing that I just want to share is like keep asking yourself, is this unsafe or is this uncomfortable? And being embarrassed, having to start again, making mistakes, getting angry at ourselves, those are just uncomfortable. They're not unsafe. Um, but if we learn how to manage those feelings, right, that's where confidence comes in. Oh, I'm disappointed in myself. Great. How do I manage disappointment within myself? That's how we build confidence, is knowing how to manage ourselves in different situations and being able to like come back to our intention, how we want to feel, going, what can I choose for that right now, rather than choosing to stay in this negative mind. I think we had talked about before we started recording about talking about shame. It always reminds me, I had a woman who taught me about shame in a woman within workshop, and she used to love it so much. She'd be like, after lunch, we're going to talk about something so great. You're going to love it. We're going to talk about shame. And I was like, oh, fun like shame. So now every time I think of shame, I think of fun like shame. I love what Brene Brown says about it, which is that shame breaks down the very part of us that thinks that we're capable of change. Meaning that when we shame ourselves, we keep going back to that bit where we're convincing ourselves that we can't do it, or that we're not enough, or that we're too much, whatever that thing is for us. And so shame is, ooh, it is a deep, dark pit, right? But I want to talk about like how we get to these uncomfortable feelings like shame and anger. And we often think like, oh, it's a feeling that I just felt shame. It just magically, again, like confidence, it just magically came over me. And while we're hitting midlife, that might be true somewhat with hormones, that our body is changing and that we get these weird feelings. But it's really our brain that is creating stories, right? Because it's not the thing that is, right? It's the thing that I'm making a story about. So when somebody is like 20 minutes late for a phone call or a meeting or something, I can start telling myself stories about how I'm not important and didn't they put this on their calendar? And, they don't care about my time. And then all of a sudden, all these statements come and I can feel the emotion coming, right? Like that anger or sadness or fear or shame, whatever is coming up for us. And there's a really great book called Emotional Agility by Dr. Susan David. And she talks about this technicolor dreaming, which is when our brain starts making up a story and then the emotions come, right? And then we get this feedback loop. Oh, now I'm feeling anxious about this. And now my brain's going to tell me even more stories about this. So it's not our body that is doing, it is the body that's doing the feeling, but it doesn't originate there. It's that beautiful brain that we all want to depend on so much that's creating these stories. And those stories are creating feelings. And so when we're uncomfortable with our feelings, what I really highly recommend is getting back into your body. because what we're doing is a stupid monkey mind thing, which is like, it's a great feature of our brain that we're supposed to be able to see everything that's unsafe or uncomfortable in front of us because it helps us manage life. Back in the day, it helped us run from a lions and stuff, right? But today, there's nowhere to run because it's all in our brain, right? All this stuff is happening in our brain. And so we need to get out of our brain, which is never in the present, right? It's always in the past or in the future, and get back into our body. And I know that you know this because of yoga and meditation. That's what this is all about, is like coming back into our body, right? And really feeling our body. And that's why when we have anxiety, doctors are like, look at 5 things, touch 3 things, hear 2 things, whatever. Because when we use our senses, we're back into our body. And when we're in our body, we're in the present and we can feel the feelings without all the craziness, without the suffering spiral going on in our head. And so when I'm in my body and I'm feeling sad or shame or anger or fear, it's a lot lower than if I'm thinking about it. And I think that, I know that there's lots of people like me who think that I can outthink these uncomfortable things. That's all I have to do is outthink them, right? Come up with solutions in my head because my brain is so smart, right? I'm so practical. I'm so logical that surely I can outthink this. But that's why we get into trouble with these uncomfortable feelings, is because we can't outthink them. In fact, the only way that we've tried to outthink them is coming up with toxic positivity or outlandish gratitude. And I don't have anything against being positive or grateful if you're feeling positive and grateful.
Mm.
I am against doing those things as a practice without being really conscious about why we're doing them. Because positivity they can both be bypasses. I'm going to just be grateful. I used to have this client who used to get right to the edge of her work and she'd be like, it's so terrible and it's so awful, but I should just be happy and I should just be grateful and okay, but that's not solving the problem. That's not getting you through the emotion. That's just like putting a Band-Aid on it, saying, I'm just not going to think about it.
Hmm.
Well, it's still there in the back of your head, creating static.
It's gonna
Like,
come back.
until we actually feel it and move through it, then we're just trying to grab, oh, I'm not going to let that one go, and now we have this huge closet of unfinished emotion or unmoved emotions that are just kind of getting trapped in our body. And I know I can go off on this for a long time, so interrupt me
Oh
if
no,
you
this is
want.
exactly what I wanted to get back to, because after you started going, I was like, oh, that's what I wanted to touch on, was the management of emotions, and how I think there is nothing on this planet that would be more useful in schools than to teach children how to manage their emotions. Because I mean, it's a loop. It's a loop we're stuck in, a generational loop where adults don't often know how to manage their emotions unless they've done the work. And if the adults don't know how to manage them, then they sure don't know how to teach their children how to manage them. And then that's where we get the whole, let me give you something to cry about. Why are you angry about this? That's stupid. That's dumb. You need to just be thankful. There's starving kids in Africa. You should be more thankful. And all of these things which are really unhelpful and just lead to suppression of emotions. And like you said, that's not healthy. That's not good. People around me, like people who are close to me, get really frustrated with me because I have to talk about any emotions that come up in our relationships, whether that be a family relationship or like with my husband or with my friends. If something is bothering me, I have to talk about it. I have to address it. And my husband especially is very good at, I'm not sure, we've been together for like 16 years. I'm not sure if he suppresses them or if he just is really good at letting things go for real. But he's constantly like, not everybody needs to talk about things to get through them, Savannah. And I'm like, well, I do. I'm sorry. So, people do find their
I
different
agree with
ways of
that.
managing.
Yeah, I agree with that too. My husband, he does a lot of his own personal growth work and he's in a lot of men's circles. He needs to talk about it a lot more than I do. He actually will tell the same story to like 16 different people, like over and over and over again, saying what exactly happened to him. I'll talk to my therapist or my coach, and that's about it. Like I mean, I have women's circles too where I can share. But I do not need to tell everybody over and over and over again. But for him, he does. And that's okay. Whatever. As long as I don't have to hear it 16 times, I'm really glad that he's got those other people to go to. But it's knowing like what it is that we need to move through it. I
Mhm.
need less and less people now just because I have tools. I have
Yeah.
tools to get me through. And it's not about like, oh, Christina, you're not going to be fearful. We're just going to crush this and blah. No, it's like, okay, so I'm feeling fear. Okay, great. And is that going to stop me? No. But whew, I have to, for me, it's just about naming it and acknowledging it and honoring it. Thank you, fear. I know that you're here because I'm doing something new. I appreciate you.
Trying to
Right.
protect.
So I can see it as a gift, right? Like, wow, that means I'm really challenging myself. That's great.
Mhm.
But it
Yeah,
doesn't have to be a stop.
they're there to protect us, those
Mhm.
fearful emotions. And like you said, used to we were running from lions and tigers and bears, and we're not anymore, but our body still treats everyday stressors like lions and tigers and bears. So whether that be work stress or a paper that's due for homework, or
You're worried about your kid at school, whatever it is. Yeah. Whatever it is, it comes up as this is uncomfortable, so I don't like it. And it's because that part of our brain needs to find something to focus on, right?
Mhm.
All we have to do is learn how to refocus it and remind it that we're fine. We're fine. I'm safe right now. I might endure a little bit of embarrassment. Might have to start that thing over again. Might have to go crochet that face a second time. But this is not a life or death situation. This is just me being uncomfortable, and that is okay. Discomfort is fine. In fact, I would say it's necessary. It's how we bloom, it's how we grow. We wouldn't grow if we weren't uncomfortable in some way. But choosing to stay stuck there is a different thing because we can acknowledge it and move on. I think is the most important thing is like I can acknowledge that I'm feeling grief right now, and I can still feel joy at the same time too.
Mhm.
Like acknowledging that we are multifaceted feelers. That is how it is. But instead, we want to focus on that one thing. And then we want to ask ourselves questions that are useless, like, what's wrong with me? Because I thought about that when you were saying, like, when we were talking about how our parents were like, I'll give you something to be angry about, or that's not the appropriate emotion. The
Mhm.
big one I used to get is, Christina, you're so sensitive.
Yes, I got that one too.
And now I see that sensitivity as my superpower
Yes.
because I had health problems. And it wasn't until I started learning my body better, right? Instead of my mind, learning my body better and going, ow, these foods don't work for me.
Mhm.
Wow, when I eat that food, that's like a Friday night nap. That is not a food I want to eat on Monday during the day when I have a lot of things to do. That all that sensitivity, right? Because all feeling is sensations in our body, and we start connecting them to feelings. Oh, when I feel angry, I can feel my face getting red. I can feel my chest like getting tight, right? That's how it feels for me to be angry. Once we can start recognizing what these little things are going on, we can listen to the messages of the feeling without being overwhelmed by them, without getting sucked in and having like, whoop, I'm angry now, right?
Absolutely.
Ooh, there's a part of me that when I'm really uncomfortable and I keep pushing myself to do something, I get so angry. And so if I can recognize the anger coming up in me first, and then and this is the part that I'm still working on, and then take a pause and breathe and go, Christina, go sit down. As I started getting hot flashes in the last year, this is something that I've had to really work on because I'm really uncomfortable when I'm going through a hot flash. And I always tell my clients hungry, angry, lonely, tired, sick. When we are any of those things, we need to go take care of that first because we're not going to make any good decisions.
Mhm.
And so when I am hot, that's one of those uncomfortable moments. And so I have to constantly, okay, Christina, take a damn breath. We're going to do this slower. Maybe we need to go sit down. Maybe we need to go eat something. Maybe I need an ice bag. I don't know. But I need to calm myself down because otherwise, last week I would have had macaroni and cheese all over my kitchen because I would have thrown it and I would have had a temper tantrum. But I've learned to bring my energy down by just acknowledging, wow, I'm feeling really uncomfortable right now. And that being honest with myself was able to be like, okay, so what do I need to do for me first? Not finish this project, not do this thing. What do I need to do for me? And that's right now. That's not when I'm done. I have to do it right now. And that can be really, really hard because of the way that we are trained that, oh, you're angry, you're upset, who cares? Move on, right? No, I say take a breath and acknowledge it. Oof, I'm feeling really angry right now. I'm
Mhm.
feeling really uncomfortable. So what does that mean? That means I need to go slower. I need more breaks. Maybe I need a nappy.
Yeah. It's our emotional guidance system. It's a absolutely we can listen to our emotions and let them guide us instead of having a temper tantrum because, adults are just as bad at having temper tantrums as 2-year-olds are.
Yeah, at least my adult is. My inner adult sure can feel a little overwhelmed by life, and we can forget that we're not robots.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate and fortunate, but we have this humaning part of ourselves that is like we still have the emotions, no matter how fast we want technology to go. Our bodies are still going to have emotions. We're still going to have fear. We're still going to have that ego that's constantly driving us to do better or feel shitty about ourselves, whichever one it is. And we have to manage all those things. We can't just ignore them, which is, I think, what the Gen X was really taught was like, just ignore those and move on. And it's like, ooh, then you start collecting them, and then that's a real mess later that you have to go to therapy for 5 years to unravel.
You get resentment towards the suppression of them and how your needs aren't being met because if you are actually listening to it's an emotional guidance system that if you can take a step back and recognize that your emotions are trying to tell you something, then you can start to dissect it and figure out why, and then things get it a little bit more manageable every time you dig a little bit deeper into it. And some people just do really well with things and don't have temper tantrums. I myself definitely have temper tantrums. I'm on the neurodivergent scale pretty deeply. And one of the biggest things that we have a problem with is emotional regulation. So it's not that I can't regulate my emotions, it's that it takes a lot more work for me to regulate my emotions. And and I've put myself out here as a spiritual leader, so people think that I'm supposed to be all zen and peaceful all the time. And no, it doesn't. Like, we're all human, and humaning is so hard. And even our emotions get the best of us sometimes. I'm not the Dalai Lama.
Yeah, and different ones will get different people, right? Like
Mm.
the way that anger was expressed in my house was never safe. So the way that I expressed it wasn't that safe. And I would get afraid of other people's anger.
Mhm.
So, and crazy enough, I became like the angry bitch because that's what kept me safe while I was growing up. Because if everybody thought I was the angry one, then nobody's going to bring anything up to me, right? Because they're afraid I might go off, right? So it was like a safety for the trauma that I had in my life.
I did the
But
same
that
thing.
that didn't serve me as I got older. So in my 30s, I'm like, but I want to make friends. And now this
Yeah.
bitch facade preventing me from really making friends in a good way, right?
Mhm.
So I had to shift the way that I was dealing with it. I'm not saying anybody's got to shift the way that they manage their emotions, but if it's not making you happy, it might be something that you look at. If you are fine throwing fits and temper tantrums, freaking do it. I told my husband my second job should be like I should open a business called the Rage Cage, where like I take a cage around and people just get to go in there and smash stuff. Because that's what my angry inner little girl wants to do when she's wounded. But there's no wrong way of managing feelings.
Mm.
It's just what's working for you best. And I knew that the way I was managing my anger was not serving me. The way that I was managing even my sadness and my fear was not serving me. And so I had to look at it. And it doesn't mean that just because we feel the feeling, it directs us. I have a life. I still have to show up to my coaching groups, even when I don't feel like it, right? I could be angry or sad, and I still got appointments and meetings and clients that I have to show up for. It's not about directing you, but it's about let me hear the message and let me answer it like an adult, like a true humaning, right? Is like, let me listen to it. What does it want from me right now? And then can I give it now, or can I at least hold it until later? Because there's a difference between holding the feeling and being like, I'm going to look at this later,
Mm.
and stuffing it. And stuffing it is what I had done for the first 30 years of my life, which was, 5 years of therapy then to like unravel and take it all back out and what actually happened to me. All those, it's fine. I had a lot of trauma in my childhood, and I would just be like, oh no, it's fine. It's fine. Like I remember my therapist going, you were sexually abused by two of your family members. She's like, don't you want to unwrap that? And I'm like, oh no, that's fine. I figured that one out. That's cool. And it's like, no, I didn't. And so when I stopped saying that's fine, and I stopped excusing everything and trying to make up excuses for it all and just felt it, it was more powerful to be able to get past it then, rather than just being like, it's fine. It's fine means it's in a box, and I don't want to open that box because that box is really scary. But that box is always there until I unpack it. And
Yep.
it's like coming home from vacation and having that luggage full of dirty clothes. Like I can ignore that if I want to. And if I ever want to wear those clothes again, or if I, ever want to look at this suitcase, it's always there waiting for me. And so it's helpful to take time to unpack it and just start asking yourself, what is this feeling trying to tell me? It's telling me I'm really angry because that person just said something that I'm telling myself stories that it's hurting my feelings. Okay, great. Do we need to address this, or is this just a story that I'm telling myself because of my own experience?
Yeah, you have to, it's that intentional thing, you got to know what's working for you and what's not. And if it's working for you, great. If it's aligning with your priorities and what you want, and it doesn't interfere with any of those, then sure. And it's everything really is a case by case.
Yeah. And we get to choose. That's the great thing, is like
I do.
we are in control of all of that stuff. But instead, in life, what I find is that that feels really hard. So I would rather go into other people's lives and try to fix their stuff or try to control other people, because if I could just control them, then I wouldn't have to deal with my feelings, right? And the things that are going on for me. Oh yeah, I love that. I love that
Take a
so
walk.
much because I relate to it so much. I went on a weekend where we were doing a lot of deep growth at work, and there was a 24-hour period of silence, meaning that you were not supposed to talk to anyone for 24 hours. And what I learned about that is when I'm in discomfort, I really like to be in someone else's discomfort instead. Like I would rather them talk about their stuff and me try to help them than look at my own stuff. And I was like, isn't that interesting, right? Just little things that we learn about ourselves. It is easier. I mean, that's why we're people pleasers, because we love to serve other people because it's easier, right? Like my clients are like, oh, why are you so good at this? I'm like, well, it's your stuff. I'm good at your stuff. It's my stuff I struggle with.
Yeah, which comes back around to we all, if we just stop for a second and breathe and really pay attention, that hyper awareness that we always want to try to be in, then we do all know what we're supposed to be doing. We do all know what those emotions are telling us to look at and to unpack and to reframe. And, that you just need to stop eating that. And you just need to move a little bit more. But yeah, a lot of us fall into that.
Mhm.
It's a lot easy because if I help you unpack your stuff, then you're the one that has to go exercise, not me.
Right. And I'm not saying that like we don't want to be there for other people. Obviously, we want to hold space for people. But I think it's so amazing how many people I've run into where they're like, I have no idea what to do with my life, but I had the 16-point plan for you. And it's like, oh, that's amazing.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, your 16-point plan for me isn't going to work because you're not me, right? So is that's the thing that we have to remember too, is like we can only really control ourselves, which is why I always come back to the intentional and aligned method, because it's like, well, how is it that I want to feel? And as long as I show up that way, I can feel really good about myself because I did my job.
Yes, absolutely. You are your greatest project. And you have to hold that, because the shame and the guilt, all of that, you have to know and trust that you're showing up from the heart. If that's who you want to be, of course. Like, you got to know who you want to be. And just as long as you are showing up from that place every time, and you're just trying your best moment to moment, everything is what it is. And I hope that that will help everybody kind of forgive themselves for doing that or not doing this.
Yeah, we're not meant to be perfect. I mean, I want to learn to laugh at myself a little bit more than I do. I already do, but I'd like to learn how to. It's just a human experience. Most of the things that we are upset about today aren't going to mean a thing in a year or 5 years. It's
Absolutely.
just so crazy how much torture and torment we can put ourselves through for the smallest things. And so, the thing that I always like to sign my emails off with is be gentle with your humanness. It's tricky. It's trickier than we make it out to be because we're not robots, unfortunately, for some people.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. It's been a wonderful, wonderful conversation I've had with you. You want to tell people where they can find you, what you have to offer, like services?
Yes, absolutely. You can find me on Instagram. I'm sure the links will be around here somewhere, but Christina_Smith_XOXO is me on Instagram. But you can also go to invitingshift.com and find out more about the podcasts, about the courses and the programs that I have. I do coaching and private sessions and these beautiful, beautiful small group sessions that have 4 women, which these women just bond with each other and they stay forever. It's really, really fantastic. So, yes, all of that and the Inviting Shift book, even though it's not prominently on my website. I think I want to redo it, because if you're not embarrassed of that first release, then you release too late. Well, luckily, Richard, I didn't release too late.
I understand that entirely. My first books I wrote were in 2015, and when I went back and redid those, I was appalled at myself. Gosh, Savannah, you really put this out for the world to see, really? But that's the
Reading
process, isn't it?
through it, there's probably really good information. Like I read through it and I was like, oh, I forgot about some of these coaching points. Those are really great. Like, so there are parts of it that I really, really love. And then there's other parts where I'm like, it could have been this. We always can make it better after it's done, right?
We're our
And
own big
that's just,
critic.
yeah, exactly. I feel like we've talked about everything this episode. So if anybody's got questions, feel free to reach out to me or, of course, Savannah, and let's have deeper conversations. That's what I'm all about, is having the deeper conversation.
Me too. I love it. All right.
Mm.
Well, you have a wonderful day, and I will link all
Thank
of
you.
that around.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Christina Smith, you guys. Go check out everything she has to offer. She and I will be doing another episode together on her podcast, Inviting Shift. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. And in the meantime, come join us in the Patreon. I would ridiculously appreciate it. That's patreon.com/earth and water. The and is spelled out. New content in there weekly. Right now, it's mostly podcast episodes because I ridiculously overscheduled myself, but that's okay. As soon as I get a little bit more caught up with all of this, then it will be also meditations and yoga videos, which we already have some in there already. So you have plenty to do in there until I can get around to putting more yoga videos on there. If that's even what you want, I have lots of things to offer. Let me know what you want specifically, and we can tailor it to you. Alchemy consultations are now open for booking as well if you want to sit down one-on-one with me and have a conversation about how we can help get you into a better alignment and vibration so that you can flow a little bit better. Ha ha ha. But no, seriously, I can help you with that. Please don't struggle alone. Please reach out to someone if it's not me, if you need help. In the meantime, I love you. I'll see you next week. Namaste.